how many alarms did you set?
I hit snooze, and I called myself stop. See, I hit snooze, not stop. Okay, my bad.
You hit stop.
I did. Okay, fine.
Okay. Hey everyone, it's your Pregnant with Purpose podcast host Regina Hasan here with a special episode I'm bringing to you all today. I have psychologist,
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Verdi Leatherman here, otherwise known as Dr. V. You may remember her from our first season. We had a two-parter with her when we were dealing with people 60 plus who are dealing with mental health issues, and we had her on. Very good episode. She's here today to talk to us about her new book and a conference that's coming up in regards to her book. She has a book that's called Surrender or Explode, and I'd like y'all to help me welcome Dr. V. Dr. V, welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
So good to have you here with us again.
I'm more excited than you are.
Okay, so let's start out by talking about the book.
Yes, ma'am.
Where did it come from?
Ooh, this book came when I didn't even know it was coming. I was a mom, just raising my kids. But I realized the challenges that my children faced as they entered adolescence early. And I knew I had to fight against the culture to save my kids. And then in my private practice, I started seeing more and more adolescents about the time that my children were adolescents. And I realized we've got to grab them before they crash and burn. And I knew in my heart that I was one of the people that God had called to help save our youth from self-destruction and from the attacks of the culture.
Tell me about the attacks of the culture. Let's talk about that. Give me an example of some of the attacks that you're talking about.
Some of the attacks of the culture, one of the biggest ones is just misinformation. There's so many contradictory information that our young people have to sort through and figure out what's true, what's a lie, what's real, what's of God, what's not of God. And they can't sort it out alone.
Okay.
And the bombardment from social media outweighs the influence of the adults who are in their face, in their presence. And we have to make a concerted effort to help them sort it out. So that's one of the major assaults, attacks of the culture.
So you're not saying overall the social media is like the devil or the enemy. It's just some of the information that we're getting fed through social media that our young people are listening to through social media.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I use social media for the benefits as much as anybody else, but our young people can't always decipher what's good for them, what's the truth, what's a lie, just like you and I. There are stories that we hear that we're not sure where that story is and what's the source of it. Right. So my book, Surrender or Explode, compares video games to life and challenges young people to play the game of life God's way. So they level up and make it to the leaderboard and stay there.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
So what about this concept of doing it based upon video games, writing the book using video games? Where did that come from?
That came from the notion that in life there are traps. And in video games, there are enemies and traps and foes and areas that if you're not careful, you will be taken captive. Life is the same way. There are traps and there are foes and there are pitfalls and there are places that we can be taken captive and we may not be able to escape and we may not be able to level up the way God would have us to level up.
Wow.
Yes,
wow.
ma'am.
Wow. And the level up process.
Yes, ma'am.
Talk to me about that.
You're not a video game player, obviously.
No.
Because in video games...
I'm 65.
Okay. In video games...
Pac-Man.
Okay. No, stop. In video games, every time you level up, the tasks, the attacks, the challenges get more difficult. You don't start out with the biggest attack, the biggest challenge from the get-go. But as you level up, scoring more points, the challenges, the enemies, the attacks are greater. In life, you don't start out learning how to get a PhD in psychology. You got to learn how to crawl. And so I make the comparison that the levels in the video games and the levels in life get more difficult as you advance. And when you get to the top of the leaderboard, you can stay there. You are the winner, but you got to learn the lower lessons first.
So this is a book that you wish you had this book when you were raising your kids.
Did you read the back cover?
No, I haven't read the back cover.
One of the people who commented on my book and gave me a 5-star said exactly that. Where was this book when I was a teenager? Where was this book when I was trying to grow up and level up in life?
So this is a good book. Oh, excuse me. This is a good book for not only people who are working with young people, people who are living with or raising young people, but it's also a good book for young people.
And I really do try to cover both bases. The way I call it is my audience are young people and young adults and all of the adults who love them. Oh. So I keep it real simple. And the adults who love them want to make a difference in their life. I call them game changers. And a game changer can come from any walk of life, any educational background, any organizational structure. The common denominator is we love our youth and we don't want them to self-destruct. That's the criteria for being a game changer.
So, say like a church that has a youth ministry.
Yes.
This book would be an excellent book for youth pastors.
Depends. One size doesn't fit all.
You said one size doesn't fit all.
Right.
Go ahead from there.
Because it depends on the size of the youth ministry. If you've got 200 youth, you can't do this one adult leader talking to 200 youth.
Okay.
Because the objective of this study to do with the way that I'm recommending is that you want discussion with the youth, not just a sermon, not just a lesson, not just instruction.
Not a curriculum.
Not a curriculum. You want them to be able to discuss. And I'm glad you asked that because one of the things I like people to understand about this book is it's not a novel you put in a young person's hand and then you walk away. It's a book that you commit to study with them, walk with them, because you're in the book. And that's one of the advantages of the youth conference. I'm going to remind the adults who come to my New Day, New Way conference that you once were a teenager. And you can look back and remember what life was like for you. But we've come so disconnected these days that we forget the challenges that we face. And so I want to remind the adults who come to my conference what it's like to walk in their shoes from their perspective, not from our perspective, but from their perspective. So if the youth program is larger, you're going to need more leaders to break them down into smaller groups.
Okay.
But if your youth organization is small from the beginning, then you can do it. In my mind, about 10 members per group gives you enough opportunity to discuss and reflect and ask questions and go deep, not just broad, but deep.
Okay. So with the book, prepare a youth leader to be able to deal with when it goes deep. Because one of the problems, like you said, is people trying to raise youth from the perspective of just seeing it from their way. Adults, let me just say that. I see a lot of that, you know.
Yes.
Oh, when I was a kid, when I was your age, I walked 200 miles to school. From that perspective. And I hear some people say, you know, well, what they need now is they need da-da-da-da. That's what our parents did for us. I'm even guilty of that, you know.
Right.
But how would sometimes I don't think that when it does get to that, I think that there's a lot of panic. That's why I think that we have parents, advisors, counselors that kind of like bury their head in the sand because they really, they either don't have what it takes to when youth decides to go deep or get real, or they don't want to hear that because it either brings up something in them that they haven't completely worked on or is scary.
Absolutely. The book prepares you but the book in and of itself may not be adequate because you're stealing all my thunder.
Right.
First and foremost, the adults have to come out of their own comfort zone.
Right.
Because talking to youth on their level, and that's one of my points, we've got to let the young people direct the conversations. We provide the structure, but they have to direct, and we have to be prepared for whatever they direct the conversation to. So first and foremost, the book provides that kind of information with the Bible as the main resource. And then there's a workbook that I've created.
Okay.
It's a companion to the book so that I help the leaders who are going to teach the young people have the structure that they need to prepare the lessons. But finally, we've got to look in the mirror as adults. Mm-hmm. I share stories in the book. You don't know which stories are my stories and which stories are someone else's stories. But I had to look in the mirror when you asked me, how did this get started? One of my adolescent children was making us crazy. And I was pulling my hair out, but I couldn't lose my child. And so I said to God, what is this? And God said, these are the chapters for your next book. Mm-hmm. And I went, oh. So God laid this out for me. But I've had to look in the mirror several times. For example, one of the look in the mirror moments for me was when I realized one of my children was marching to a different drum beat. It wasn't his dad's drum beat. It wasn't my drum beat. The drum beat was very different. And I was freaking out because I was used to a certain kind of drum beat. And God said, it's okay to march to a different drum beat. And then he ran through the list of people in the Bible and all their different drum beats. And I went, oh.
There was some.
There were multiple drum beats in the Bible. So God had to settle me down so that I could then parent my child more effectively. Mm. So on the one hand, yes, there's material in the book. That's why I wrote the book, to help you lead. But you've got to look at yourself and you've got to know what you believe so that you cannot teach anything you don't believe.
That's true. That is so true. That is so true.
Yes,
looking at self, starting with self first, because as a counselor, we were always taught that, you got to look at your own stuff, because if you don't, you're going to come into your office one day and sit across from your desk, and that's not easy to deal with.
And that's why I said a few minutes ago that one of the benefits of coming to the conference is you will walk in their shoes as you remember what it was like to walk in your own shoes.
Great.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so since you brought it up a couple of times, talking about stealing thunder, let's segue right on into the conference. Tell me about the conference.
Oh my goodness, I am so excited. The conference is on June 24th in Houston, Texas, downtown. And it is designed for adults who love youth and young adults, no matter your organizational background, structure, church membership, affiliation, etc. I am going to bring the adults together and I'm going to give them an opportunity to, first and foremost, walk in the shoes of the of the youth. And partly that means that you're going to understand their walk from their perspective, not just from what we think their walk is like. But I'm also going to give you skills and knowledge and tools to use in the new day that we live in, because the old way isn't working. And at the end of the conference, you will have confidence, you will have excitement, and you will feel prepared to take on the challenge of more effectively teaching, training our young people how to play the game of life God's way so they won't explode. And instead, they will surrender.
Very good. Very good.
I'm excited.
So it's on June 24th.
Yes.
What time are we talking about?
It will be 10 to 3. Lunch will be provided, and there's registration information available on my website, surrenderorexplode.com.
And we'll have that scrolling across the bottom, won't we, guys? Y'all can say yeah, huh?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So you just gonna let me look like I'm talking to myself.
Yes.
Right. So, Dr. Leatherman, what is the main thing that you want people to understand about the book as well as the conference? Can you just give me that?
That's for
I
me.
know it's a lot.
No, it's not. It's not really a lot.
Right.
It's really simple. One of my favorite parts of the Bible is when God chastised the children of Israel because they did not teach the next generation who he was. The adults in my generation and beyond have a responsibility to make sure we have taught, not the culture, our young people how to play the game of life God's way.
Right.
And I consider that a two-way street because when I work with young people, they blow my mind because of the things they teach me. And I've learned some valuable lessons in working with them. So the book, the movement, and the vision that God gave me was simple. Teach our young people and let them choose. It goes back to the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, God allowed us choice, but he taught us before we bit the apple. We must teach our young people before they bite the apple again and again and explode, because all explosions are not loud and noisy. Some explosions are very subtle and quiet.
Well, Dr. Leatherman, I want to thank you for coming.
Yes,
I have enjoyed this. It has been so informative.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm looking forward to the A New Day, A New Way conference.
Yes.
I love that title,
Yes.
A New Day, A New Way
Yes.
conference, because I think that we do need to look at things in a different way, especially with our youth of today.
Yes.
I always say, there's some things we can do differently. It doesn't remove who God is. It doesn't remove the essence of who God is. It doesn't remove his character, because he remains the same no matter what. So
Absolutely.
I really like this. I really like this. And I'm so glad you came and shared it with the Pregnant with Purpose audience. I know that I usually reach out for folks who are 60 plus, and I'm not saying that this isn't for the 60 plus, but if you're 60 plus and you know someone, or you love youth, you have a youth in your life, this conference is for you. Make sure you tell someone about this conference, as well as the book, Surrender or Explode. You got to get it just for that title.
Sure.
I know you have someone that you can give it to. We'll have more information. And I think I've already demonstrated to you, my segment, your old win. I think I've already demonstrated when the only video game that I have reference to is Pac-Man. So with that, I'm going to close it like I always do by saying, if you're not dead, God's not done. See you. Bye.